Hola, buen día. Soy Fabio de
Hello.
Brasil.
Hi, my name is Fabio. I come from Brazil. I'm going to speak a bit about
Indústria de VR em
the
Brasil
VR industry in Brazil
e
and
como ajudamos
how
uns aos
we help
outros
each
para
other
coproducir.
to co-produce.
Vou falar sobre
I'm going to speak about HyperVR, which is my platform. It is an ecosystem for the education, production, encouragement, and distribution of immersive audiovisual content. As we spoke today about interactive videos, AR, VR, etc. It is a very new initiative in Brazil. It began about 3 years ago to begin to think about these type of content. From 2009, I have been working with interactive videos for the internet, games. In 2009, I did an ARG for Sony for the series called Lost, Perdidos, and then I began to work and to search for ways to get the audience to interact with content, which is a great big challenge. The last thing we did 3 days ago is the first VR festival in Brazil. You can see the pics here. We had a lot of people that came around. Lots of people were interested in consuming this type of content, in knowing how to produce and how to create this type of content. There was a lot of technology, varied technology.
juegos.
There were games and films and interactive technologies. Many university students were interested in seeing how to get the university to change their curriculum so that it would embrace more of film, games, internet, with VR and AR. And this goes from the companies, from the university. It's very interesting to understand that people who create and consume this type of content is demanding and creating a demand, as well as the people who study at university. We also had some speakers, some professionals, film directors who had spent their whole lives doing traditional films and now are incurring into the VR world. People who belong to the ad industry. I know that here the big VR industry is also linked to advertising. Of course, games and ad agencies initiatives who are creating VR arcades so people on the streets can consume and play and look at content. Brazil is also trying to not think about the crisis and all the political turmoil we're going through, and trying to give the audience the chance for an easier approach to VR. We all know that we need to have the glasses or something like these glasses, these headsets, and a phone. But not all phones have all the things that are needed, the gyroscope, etc. But the arcade that we're trying to open and grow in Brazil, so people in the streets have the first approach, which is simple, cheap, to go into the VR world. So you can see whether they're going to be consumers or creators, the brands, the advertising, the market and the industry needs to understand that this is something that exists, that everybody is doing in the world, and it's not because we have financial and social turmoil that this needs to be out. This is to put Brazil in the global map for VR. Some of our statistics of the last initiative, we had almost 800 people who paid to be there, especially to listen, to consume, and to listen to the professional, to see how to make money, how to produce content. We had over 30 companies and partners who helped us, who supported us and participated in the ecosystem, some ad agencies, production companies, game companies who are focused on VR games, one especially who is doing their intellectual property in several different platforms for AR, VR, and traditional game consoles. An arcade called Arcade, called from a special big company in Brazil who has just opened another office in Canada, which is also creating multi-platform, multiplayer games, VR games. They're unbelievable. They are at international level. And another game. The one that's there in the middle, that you can see with a Nintendo control system, which is a Brazilian game, 100% Brazilian. The character is a girl who is at school and who wants to play her game, and the teacher doesn't allow it. And it's amazing because you get into the girl's skin. You feel like the 8-year-old girl who's playing at school. It's very interesting, that game. The market is eager. We have a lot of people who are interested and enthusiastic. The press in Brazil are very interested, and there are companies in Brazil who want to produce international level content. I go back to Brazil tomorrow because I need to record some videos for a news portal in 360. So everybody's looking for this kind of content, but not very many know how to make it interesting, because many use a camera and just record anything. But we know there is a very big challenge ahead into learning how to tell a story. And one of the issues at the festival was exactly that, how to tell good stories in 360, which is quite complicated. And the festival was the first hyper initiative. The other ideas are obviously to see what the best contents could be and to show them on festivals and events, and to talk to people who are producing journalism, advertising, traditional feature films, and knowing how to get them interested into VR and 360, to be able to tell stories for a mass audience, to create courses, workshops, and also to produce with co-production initiatives and to create opportunities to be able to internationalize these contents here and in the States, of course. Some figures in the market in Brazil. These are obviously companies that I know personally. These are not companies that I Googled. These are companies which are producing now, and this I don't have many contacts with the north of Brazil. These are placed in the south of Brazil. There's about 15 companies that create games, produce games. Then film production companies, there's about 30. Then there's very interesting cases for hardware companies. We know that hardware, of course, they're famous in Europe and the US, of course. There's lots of different gear-best things in China are amazing, and Brazil has 5 of these companies, and these arcade shops, which for me are the most direct way of giving access to content for the people. And this is a more detailed graph with regards to what happens in the Brazilian market. Many people, when this began 2-3 years ago with VR, many people began to try to sell 10% of the market shows cardboards for events, for brands. This is a screenshot from the game that I mentioned before. It's a girl who's playing her game at school during class. This is a success for Brazil. This game hasn't been launched yet, but the VR global community is very enthusiastic with regards to this game because it's been in the works for about 2 years. And this is another game, VR game, which is very much and eagerly expected by the VR community. So what happened with 360 and VR in Brazil in the last few days? When the World Cup was celebrated in Brazil, Google went to the shanty towns and did a VR and a 360 recording, and many content companies were involved in this project, also in the Olympics. So when there is a global event, many Brazilian companies become involved, especially in 360 recording. One of the first cases was also that was able to get a giant amount of interest was this music video from a famous singer in Brazil, which remained in Facebook for a while as the most viewed and with the highest amount of hits on Facebook. I did this video last year for Red Bull Studios. We had some problems to sell this project because it was a very simple 360 video until we spoke about spatial audio. Spatial audio has a very important place in 360 or VR recordings, because when you hear the audio positioned from the source, especially when you're looking at the instrument or the voice and you can hear the sound coming straight from there. So we tried to sell it for a long time to Red Bull. They did not understand why to do a 360 video until we spoke about positional audio or 3D audio, and then we were able to sell it. Other very important projects that we have in Brazil to do with VR are to do with brands. That's where the money is, actually. With a chocolate brand who created a game, a VR game for kids. And they gave the game together with the chocolate came the plastic glasses that allowed you to play the game. And here you can see the VR vaccine, which is a problem for kids who do not like to have their vaccinations applied. But if you're looking at something else, a hero or something that is more fantasy-based, they might forget about the process of being vaccinated. And then in hardware, this Lux company, which does different types of products for VR, promotional, for example, they try to sell this project for Coca-Cola and Pepsi and all of these big pop companies, because these are simple but intelligent ideas. You finish drinking your Coca-Cola and you get the VR glasses and you can consume the content with your smartphone. Other productions, a documentary about the Indian population. Then on the left, you can see an AR game where the characters come out of the paper, and an arcade, which is a multiplayer platform which can be seen in events or shops or malls. And the thing now is to add efforts among the whole Latin American community and Brazil, because we are strong on our own, but we're not enough to break through the market barriers. All of the Latin American countries are in big trouble at the moment. We've just seen the protest outside Brazil. For whoever watches news, Brazil is in the midst of super serious critical trouble with investment when it comes to culture. If we unite and do productions, co-productions, we will be stronger and be able to do better things. And to finish off, if you want to speak to me later on or send me an email, or if you have any ideas for co-production, we are here available. Thank you.
La comunidad.
Okay, virtual reality community is a new community in Argentina. There's a new chamber called AITIA, which brings together people who are explorers, who are trying to produce content and live on them. Brazil is basically a 200 million consumers market, 1 hour 30 minutes from our domestic airport. So Fabio's visit is not at random, because we have a new business trying to develop. We have a 200 million people market, 1 hour and a half away from here, and the goal is producing jointly. Here in the audience are many people trying to produce VR content. What we see here in Argentina is that, generally speaking, VR narrative is more experimental and does not monetize. What does monetize is using VR for other non-expressive tools. VR for real estate, to see what an apartment looks like before you actually buy it, or VR for very expensive machinery. A company may make their workers test before spending so much money when actually using it. Is the trend the same in Brazil? Are there any narrative experiences monetizing already, or this is just experimental? It's similar because, like it happens with the cinema, it's the same with the film festivals because there's the full mechanics of distribution. Here we have seen some cases, for example, that of the Natura company, the ones that invest. At some point, I identified 4 clear contents: experimental marketing actions, that is, brands testing new vehicles, real estate, and learning, that is to say, any educational issues. Is there any other line? Games and porno. Yeah, porno. It's a very strong industry. No, it's not a joke. It is real. Pornography is one of the reasons why people slide their credit cards, and many step-throughs have been made. This is something we discussed at MediaMorfosis 2015. In the porno industry, you can find many experimental reactions because this is fast money or early money. Are there contents that are interesting or valuable for narratives? Also, in the industry of health, some valuable experiences could be brought to narratives. Yeah, the key here is content, regardless of the technology. Yeah, porno helps with 3D because it makes sense. But content and how the brand will deal with contents within 360 storytelling is something more important. Is there any co-production credit line open with the Brazilian government that allows for are coming together as Latin American? Is there, for example, if there's a producer, an Argentinian one, willing to get ready to Brazil, is that available? We are discussing with the government something for interactivity, VR, AR. We just got back from MediaMorfosis Sao Paulo, and we met with people from SPC and the Ministry of Culture, and there's for a credit line for transmedia, but I don't know for VR. Yeah, we succeeded at giving into the box of interactive and games, something like that. Is there any question for Fabio on the Brazilian industry? Any questions here? Yeah, please speak into the mic. Thank you. You're talking about education, and I would like to know if schools or universities are not interested in buying VR content, because not only games for little children, but I'm thinking, for example, here, Argentinian history, the kids crossing the Andes as if they were our forefathers, San Martin. It's like being part of history. Aren't schools consumers? Is there any educational production in Brazil? For example, in Brazil, any activities outside the ordinary are paid by the parents. That is to say, there is no government budget for developing contents and new technologies. So far, I know there is not. Anybody with kids in school knows that 45-minute school system and then the break is boring. Well, somebody invented this at some point in time, and it could be reinvented. Yeah, some schools are actually trying to have more contents, for example, robotics or VR games, but there is no systematization. Anything else? Very well. Here, Pepe. I would like to know if what you're doing in 360 can be applied with the audiovisual support law, if there's any possibility for funding, and if there is any type of link with international signals getting into the paid TV in Brazil, which is compelled to make some contents with independent productions. Unfortunately, we don't have that here. Yes, in Brazil, there's a law for which any private or paid channel should have a 20% national production, but not VR because that is not for television. You can produce a series that has a VR spin-off, but that spin-off is not part of the budget. Brazil has a very specific law called Ancine, fostering audiovisual production. That was the question. To see if VR contents were provided for there. No, because this is not screen, this is not TV. No, this is a separate category. Yeah, because the games are played outside that channel. Okay, Fabio will be holding meetings with colleagues, meeting with producers to see projects and co-production paths. Thank you very much. Thank you. Fabio, off to lunch, and we'll be back.